All right. Good morning, everybody. Looks like we are live. Chuck Holton coming to you from my studio here in Panama. And we've got a lot to talk about. Two Venezuelan F-16s buzzed the USS Dunham in international waters yesterday. The Pentagon put up this announcement. Let's see if we can find that one. It says from the Department of Defense, soon to be renamed the Department of War. Today, two Maduro regime military aircraft flew near a U.S. Navy vessel in international waters. This highly provocative move was designed to interfere with our counter-narco-terror operations. The cartel running Venezuela is strongly advised not to pursue any further effort to obstruct, deter, or interfere with counter-narcotics and counter-terror operations carried out by the U.S. military. So, tell me, do you think the USS Dunham should have just shot those two aircraft down? And put your answer in the comments for me. Also, let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to go through and watch that. We got people right now from Oregon. We got people from Eastern Washington. Let's see, Maryland, Indiana, South Africa, all over the world, Oklahoma, Spokane, Washington, Cape Town. Great. Good to see you all. And thank you very much for being here. Now, as I said, the Pentagon called this highly provocative. What it turned out was that they were two US-made F-16 fighter jets that belong to Venezuela that overflew the USS Dunham. As a matter of fact, the Venezuelan military put out a TikTok that showed a video of it. Take a look at this. This shows, this is an F-16 built by the United States. There's the USS Dunham. Not very good camera work. You can tell that they don't have great camera gear. I mean, they can't even afford a GoPro, apparently. But the most interesting to me, I figured it would have been an S-30 flanker or something like that, because Venezuela has more of those. But as it turns out, the Venezuelans actually have 24 F-16 fighter jets. Now, probably almost none of those are actually functioning. They bought those things back in the 1980s under a special program, but we haven't sent them any spare parts for those things in a long time. So it's believed that only 3 of those F-16s actually still function. They're obviously older models, have not gotten the upgrades that our F-16s that we fly have. On top of that, again, now Venezuela says that 14 of them are still functioning, but that's highly doubtful. It is just surprising. Now, the USS Dunham is one of the armada of ships that are currently out in the, I think maybe my son doesn't know I'm online. Hang on. What's up? I'm live right now. Okay, I thought there was a problem. All right, bud. Okay, now I'm sure my microphone is messed up, so I got to fix my microphone. Hang on a second. Okay, there we go. Better microphone, so you can hear me better. USS Dunham is an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, and it's got a bunch of weapon systems on it that could easily take down those old F-16s, easily. Now, the question is, I had asked you, do you think that they should have taken them down? Do you think, no, it doesn't look like anybody really answered me. One person said no, no. Okay, a couple people said no. Now, they could have easily, it would have taken seconds to shoot those aircraft down. But as it turns out, it's not actually, illegal to overfly U.S. Navy ships in international waters. Now, it is provocative. There's no question about that. We've got at least 7 U.S. warships and 4,500 sailors and Marines that are operating in that region. So it's definitely provocative to start taking our main adversary, taking their fighter jets and overflying our ships. And the only way that it would be justified for the U.S. to shoot down those planes would be if they were acting in a manner that was consistent with preparing to fire at us, threatening our ships by lining up on a gun run, or maybe illuminating us with their lasers or radars or something that shows that they were getting ready to fire missiles at us. But as it turns out, they were armed, those 2 F-16s. So it is not just provocative, but it possibly could spark a wider war, because these guys flying over the U.S. ships, we don't know what their intentions are. And if they're armed and they're coming at us, we have seconds to decide. Fortunately, the intelligence gathering capability of those ships allows them to see those planes when they're way beyond visual range. So we could see them likely hundreds of miles away, probably when they took off from Venezuela. So it's not likely that we would make a mistake and just shoot at them. But if we did, it certainly could spark more of a conflagration. And so we wouldn't want to do that. Now, in response, the United States has announced they're going to deploy 10 F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is one of the closest military bases to where all this is happening. We do have a small military presence in Colombia. We've done some stuff with Guyana in recent years, and I'll talk more about that later. But our recent sinking of a smuggler's boat, and we claim that the Trump administration claims 11 people were killed in that boat. They say they have very good intelligence that they were narco traffickers from the Tren de Aragua gang that were moving cocaine north to the United States. And they just smoked that boat and did that as a show of force and a warning to others. So officially, this provocation by these 2 F-16s from Venezuela is tied to that attack, sinking of the smuggler's boat. And they're claiming on this. Let me see if I can go back here to the TikTok. I'll just read what this says down here. FANB is the Bolivarian National Armed Forces of Venezuela, published as a success of the interdiction video of 2 F-16 fighter jets overflying a destroyer from the United States. Well, it's not a destroyer really, but so they successfully, according to them, overflew our thing. Well, okay, we'll give them that. They successfully overflew a ship. They know how to fly their planes. Congratulations. Now, we also have Marines from the 22nd MEU that are training in Puerto Rico right now as well. So in addition to the 4,500 troops we have on ships that are in the Caribbean, we've got another mobile expeditionary unit of Marines that's close by. So in international airspace, overflight of ships is legal under what they call Article 87, but there's no innocent passage right for military aircraft the way that ships have. So unsafe or aggressive maneuvers are not only dangerous, but very provocative. Now, as I mentioned, the rules of engagement of the ships that we have out there right now are that force is authorized if there's a hostile act or hostile intent, like a radar lock or something like that, against our ships. Now, this isn't the first time that the Venezuelans have been provocative towards U.S. military in the region. If you go back to 2019, July 19th, a flanker Su-30 aircraft aggressively shadowed, I've got that up here, aggressively shadowed a U.S. EP-3 in international airspace. Now, this is a close-up of that fighter jet from Venezuela that's essentially harassing one of our aircraft, a U.S. military aircraft. And you can see there, there it is. So this is all footage that was released by the U.S. Air Force back in 2019 when that happened. You see, we have a prop plane there that it's sort of harassing, right? So that's exciting. In March of 2020, a Venezuelan patrol ship harassed a Portuguese cruise ship that was in international waters off of the coast of Venezuela. The Venezuelan Navy came out with their patrol ship and radioed the Portuguese cruise ship. It was called the RCGS Resolute was the name of the cruise ship. And they radioed them and said, pull over, you know, you're coming into port. We're going to confiscate your ship because you're in Venezuelan waters. The Portuguese cruise ship said, no, we're not. And the Venezuelan ship said, yeah, you are. And the Portuguese ship said, no, we're not. So the Venezuelan ship said, we will ram you if you don't pull over. And the Portuguese ship said, have at it. Go ahead. Why? Because this particular Portuguese cruise ship was an icebreaker that does cruises in like the Arctic, I guess. And so the Venezuelan patrol ship rammed the Portuguese cruise ship, and the Venezuelan ship broke apart and sank, which was just a spectacular self-own on the part of the Venezuelan Navy. Now, there have been other, let's just say, provocative actions taken against the U.S. military in other places in recent years. For example, the Russians have, I mean, to say harassed is kind of a weak term. In one case, a Russian fighter jet came within 5 feet of an American aircraft. And I mean, that's all but ramming it. Within 5 feet of another airplane in the air, that's Top Gun stuff right there. In 2016, Russian Su-24s buzzed the USS Donald Cook and got within 30 feet of it. And obviously, very irresponsible flying by the Russians. In 2017, a Russian Su-27 intercepted U.S. KC-135, and that's the one that it got within 5 feet. That's a refueling aircraft. The Russian fighter jet came within 5 feet of a refueling aircraft, which is a tanker. It's got a lot of fuel on board. Could make a huge hole in the sky if that thing, you know, went up. The Russians aren't the only ones that have done this. In 2018, a Chinese destroyer closed to 45 yards of a USS Decatur in the South China Sea. In 2001, a Chinese J-8 collided with a US EP-3 over the South China Sea, 70 miles from Hainan. Actually collided. Back in 2017, there were some Iranian fast boats that harassed several U.S. naval ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And in 1988, the USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian air flight over the Strait of Hormuz, thinking it was an Iranian military jet. And that was a big mistake on the part of the United States. Many of you probably don't remember that. I didn't remember that. But I was kind of surprised to read that. The USS Vincennes shot down an Iran air flight with 290 people on board over the Strait of Hormuz. Killed everybody. Cuban MiG-29s shot down 2 rescue aircraft in international airspace back in 1996. So, I mean, there's some, pattern here. And the pattern we see is that these totalitarian regimes like to try to bait American military, and we don't usually take the bait. But there have been accidents that have happened in which hundreds of people have died because of things like this. So imagine you've got a couple of aircraft that are coming toward your ship. They took off from Venezuela. They're flying directly at you. You don't know what their intentions are. If you wait until the plane gets close enough to see and it launches torpedoes or missiles at your ship, you might have only seconds to respond, and you might not be able to launch the anti-air missiles that would take down those missiles that were just shot at you because they're too close already. And so the ships would have to rely on what they call their Sea-Whiz system, which is like a big robot that looks like R2-D2. It's giant, though. It's about, 10 feet high. And it's got a Vulcan cannon, like a Gatling gun, mounted on it. It's radar operated, and if it sees something coming in, it swivels and fires and shoots those things down. The Sea-Whiz stands for Close-In Weapons System. And that would be the only option at that point. So what do? Do you take a chance? And because it could be a civilian airplane. And you see that thing coming from, you don't see it, but you see it on radar. You don't want to make a mistake and shoot down a civilian aircraft. You don't want to make a mistake and start an international incident by shooting down a military aircraft of the aggressor country. But, what do? You just sit there and wait and see if it shoots at you? Because if it does, it's likely to kill a bunch of Americans. And so this is the situation that Venezuela is putting us in. And they're doing it on purpose. They want us to have that dilemma. They say that, the best thing to do to defeat your enemy is not to give him problems, but give him dilemmas where there's no good option. And we have to choose the least bad option. And what you see time and time again is that rather than choose the safest option, which would be to blow that thing out of the sky so that we don't have the risk to our own troops, we choose instead to put our own troops at greater risk to keep from shooting down an innocent aircraft or to cause an international incident. The Venezuelans know this, the Russians know this, the Chinese know this, the Iranians know this. They all know this. And they use our good graces against us. They weaponize the fact that we are a moral army and don't want to shoot down innocent aircraft. They use that against us. And you'll notice that the United States doesn't ever buzz Chinese naval ships. The U.S. doesn't ever send a fighter jet to get within 5 feet of a Russian jet to threaten it in international airspace. Why? Well, partially because Russia, China, Iran have a history of shooting first and asking questions later. They don't operate by the same rules of engagement that we do. And I've often said that you can tell who's on the right side of history by looking at those rules of engagement. If Russia's rules of engagement say bomb first, ask questions later, and that's exactly what their rules of engagement are, because we saw that in Syria for years. Russia was bombing innocent civilians left and right under the auspices of fighting ISIS. But they just go, yeah, we think that area over there might have had some ISIS people passing through it, so we're just going to level the whole town. And they would just go in and carpet bomb. I myself helped to treat some of the wounded Syrians who were wounded by Russian bombings. And I can tell you that is exactly what the Russians do in situations like that. Now, of course, the Venezuelans are angry that the United States just blew one of their narco-trafficking boats out of the water, because that represented millions of dollars worth of profit for their, drug kingpins, some of which are the president, the vice president, and other ministers of the government. And so we're going to talk more about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor, Preserve Gold. Folks, we got 1,200 people online, and I don't know about you, but if you travel, one of the things that's important to do is to make sure that you've got some backup funding in case your credit cards quit working, your passport and your credit cards all get stolen, you aren't able to get money out of an ATM or the cash, just you have a problem there. Again, get robbed or whatever. And one of the ways that I keep myself safe when I'm traveling is to carry one of these. You look here. This is a 1 ounce gold coin. This happens to be a Krugerrand from South Africa. And this little coin, whoops, I just dropped it on the floor. I don't know where it went. This little coin just represents about $3,500 right now. And this is, like I said, just a little bit larger than a quarter. So you could drop this thing in your pocket. Nobody ever know you had it. You're not required to report it. Most places like India, you might be. And so carrying one of these with me when I travel is one way that I can have some backup funding just in case I have a problem. And right now, I'm very happy to recommend Preserve Gold. I just got a chance to interview the CEO of Preserve Gold, Daniel Boston, out in California. And this guy is solid. As a matter of fact, you're going to get a chance to hear from him on Monday's podcast, so you're not going to want to miss that. And this guy knows his stuff. We had a very good discussion about where the gold market is going. Did you know that that gold has outperformed the S&P 500 this year by 3,500%? I'm sorry, by 350%. I mean, that is rare, but it does happen. And the reason that it's happening is because gold likes to climb a wall of worry. That means the price of gold goes up when things are uncertain in this world. And as you and I both know, there's plenty of uncertainty to go around right now. So if you would like to get yourself a gold coin like this, or several, to put into your portfolio, to have as a hedge against inflation, or just to have in case you have an emergency, go to preservegold.com/hotzone or text the word Chuck to 50505, and you will be able to talk to one of their representatives. They'll give you a very good sense of what it takes if you want to transfer your 401k or part of it over to a gold IRA, something like that. And I highly recommend it. So again, text Chuck to 50505 or go to preservegold.com/hotzone. And thank you very much to Preserve Gold for sponsoring our podcast. Okay, so now this, you might say, wow, we shot the Democrats are all freaking out right now, like, oh my gosh, President Trump's out of control. He's shooting boats out of the water without due process in international waters. As a matter of fact, one of the 700 federal judges we have in the United States, who for some reason all of a sudden think that they are above the president of the United States and they can dictate to the president what he can do. One of the federal judges actually signed an injunction that told President Trump, you can't just blow ships out of the water. You have to arrest them, give them due process in the United States, and that sort of thing. Well, that puts U.S. Coast Guardsmen at risk to do that. I'll show you more of that in just a second. And so we'll see if they continue to do that. But it's not the first time. I mean, I went out and found video. Let's see if I can find that video for you here. Yeah, check out this video of, this is from several years ago. This is a U.S. Coast Guard aircraft firing warning shots. That was a machine gun. Now he's firing with a 50 caliber sniper rifle. And it looks like he's actually firing, he's not firing at the people, he's firing at the boat, trying to take out. Now there he's firing in front of the boat, trying to get them to stop. That's firing across the bow. But it shows that we have shot at boats before. And so, let's see if that, what that means is, there is some precedent to this. And I was kind of surprised because, we're hearing a lot about them shooting this one boat out of the water a couple days ago, but there have been a bunch of drug interdictions near Venezuela, coming out of Venezuela, just in the last few weeks. So like June 15th, the Coast Guard seized 1,100 pounds of cocaine just northeast of the Venezuelan coast. 1,100 pounds of cocaine is a lot of cocaine. June 30th, 2 weeks later, they picked up 2,300 pounds of cocaine off the shore of Venezuela. So they've been interdicting other go-fast boats like this. July 11th, they picked up 9,000 pounds of marijuana just northeast of Silva, Venezuela. August 2nd, they picked up 3,600 pounds of marijuana north of Carabobo, Venezuela. Back in April, they picked up 1,300 pounds of cocaine and 4,000 pounds of marijuana just off Puerto Cabello. So far, summer of 2025, the U.S. Coast Guard ship Hamilton, the cutter Hamilton, recorded a record offload. The offload means they've been picking this stuff up at sea, taking these go-fast boats out, arresting the people, and then when they finally come back into the harbor, they offload the cocaine and marijuana that they've picked up. So far, the Coast Guard cutter Hamilton alone, that one ship, has picked up 61,000 pounds of cocaine and 14,400 pounds of marijuana. That has a street value of almost $500 million. Just that one Coast Guard cutter working so far this summer in the Caribbean has picked up almost $500 million worth of cocaine and marijuana. So there's obviously a big problem there. And as I said, the Trump administration now has said that they're going to deploy 10 F-35 fighter jets, our most advanced fighter, to the area to assist with picking up these go-fast boats that are leaving Venezuela. F-35s have a lot of signals intelligence gathering capability. So they're not just a fighter jet. They're not just made for blowing things up. So they could actually be a lot of help. If we're flying in fighter jets over the coast of Venezuela, we're going to have an increased ability to pick up surface vessels that are leaving the coastline and going, somewhere else. But that's a little bit overkill because we've got other aircraft that can perform that mission that are not near as expensive as an F-35. So it appears to me that the decision to send F-35s out there has more to do with a show of force and a warning to Venezuela not to try to send your old decrepit F-16s up into the air against us. Like, let's not have that happen again, shall we? Now, Venezuela isn't just sending go-fast boats. The one that we saw that got blown up earlier this week had, I think, 4 gigantic, like 300 horsepower engines on the back. So that's like a cigarette boat. Those things go very fast. And they don't typically go from Venezuela directly to the United States. They'll go from Venezuela to Haiti, Venezuela to Mexico, someplace like that, and then they'll go overland from there. The Venezuelans have been known to use semi-submersible boats that are homemade almost submarines. They're not true submarines because they can't dive and stay underwater, but they travel just below the surface, and they have like a snorkel that comes up so that they can get air, right? Mostly Peaceful Riot is a U.S. Coast Guard vet. Thank you for your service. Appreciate that. Now, these semi-submersibles, like I said, they are custom made, and they're meant to go one way. They're not, most of them, ever reused. So they build them, cost maybe a couple $100,000 to build one of these things, but they're hauling tens of millions of dollars worth of cocaine, each one. So it's a rounding error to throw away a couple $100,000 on the transport. And they launch them off the north coast of Venezuela. We'll go over to a map here and take a look at our map. So they'll launch them off of the north coast here from Caracas, and take them up. A lot of these will go up and will land right here in Haiti. I've actually traced this myself. I've done some reporting on this before. If you look at this road that's labeled 101 right here in Haiti, that is not actually a highway or anything of the sort. It's more of a 2-track. It's a 4-wheel drive track. It is paved partway up to Seguin, which is right here. Okay, the town of Seguin, which is a tiny little town up in the mountains of Haiti. This is like 8,000 feet above sea level up here. And it takes 4x4s to make it all the way back down into Port-au-Prince. But there's not a lot of patrols along the water out here. So those go-fast boats can come into Marigot, and they can dump off the drugs right there. I'll show you an aerial view of that. Dump off the drugs here late at night. They get picked up by some off-road vehicles, like side-by-sides, and they transport them over the mountains, all the way up over the mountains, and come back down into Port-au-Prince. They go to the port in Port-au-Prince, where they put them on a ship, and then those ships go to the Port of Miami. Port of Miami has so many containers coming and going, they can't search them all. So many of them end up getting through, and that's one of the ways they get drugs up there. But that's not the only way they do it. A lot of times they'll go from Venezuela over here to the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, or all the way up to Monterey, you know, this area up here. All right, and then they'll ship them overland into the United States. So there's plenty of routes for them to do that. So the question is, what does this what is the main threat here? Are we going to end up going to war with Venezuela? You've heard me say several times that there is some precedent to the United States going into a Latin American country and arresting an illegitimate dictator and taking him to jail in the United States for drug-related offenses. Because we did that here in Panama back in 1989. I was a part of that invasion. We came in, we conquered Panama very quickly in the matter of 24, 48 hours. The dictator, Manuel Noriega, went and hid in the papal embassy in Panama City. Eventually, we got him out of there. We arrested him. We took him to Miami. He faced drug charges, spent 20 years in prison there, and lived out the rest of his life in prison. So I've heard a lot of people saying, well, we did it in Panama. We can do it in Venezuela too. There's some challenges to that, not the least of which is the fact that Venezuela is much, much larger than Panama. So if we go back to this map here, if we look at the country of Panama over here, the size of that compared to the size of Venezuela. Venezuela is a good almost 10 times the size of, and of course, a lot of it is uninhabited. Down here in the Amazon regions, there's not a lot of people. So we wouldn't need to take over the whole country. We'd really just need to take Caracas, to tell you the truth, and the rest of the country would probably fall. But the armed forces of Venezuela, the FANB, they claim they've got about 123,000 active duty personnel, another 220,000 National Guard. That is about 10 times the size of the army that we went up against when we invaded Panama. To say nothing of the fact that we already occupied Panama before the invasion. It's the only time in history that I know of where we invaded a country that we already occupied. So we had 27,000 U.S. troops in Panama before the invasion. And so all they had to do was just sort of roll out the gates of our bases and go take over whatever we wanted to take over in Panama. It's very easy to do that. We don't have bases in Venezuela. So we'd have to move all those troops onto shore with beach landings, airborne assaults, air assault raids, things like that. But that doesn't mean it's not doable. Again, Caracas is really the prize. As long as Maduro is in Caracas, we only have to take not even the whole city of Caracas. We only have to take a portion of Caracas in order to successfully extract Maduro. Well, and let's say he's in the presidential palace in Caracas. So let's see what that looks like. Let's see if we can find it. It's called the Palacio de Miraflores. And we'll go back to the map here. Palacio de Miraflores is the presidential palace in Caracas. It doesn't look real imposing, does it? And it's kind of looks like street level, looks like, let's see here. Doable. Looks pretty nice inside. Right on the street like that, not super secure. So what would happen here if we go to the actual map surrounding this area? Well, zoom out, zoom out. All right, let's go look at this area. Now it's out of focus. Okay, we got to fix that. There we go. Nope, there we don't go. What in the world? There we go. Okay. So that presidential palace is right here. Palacio de Miraflores. If the United States military went in to get him out, what we would do is we would take over several square blocks around this palace. We would use blocking positions. We'd probably airdrop or air assault rangers, maybe some infantry guys or whatever in there, take over that area. At the same time, we would be striking any nearby military bases. We'd probably blow up. There's a barracks right here, looks like. This building it appears to be a military barracks of some sort. So we'd probably just evaporate that building. We would have combat helicopters, attack helicopters flying overhead. We would have maybe the new gunships, the old Spectre gunships. Now it's got a different name. The Ghost, what do they call them? Ghost Rider? I don't know, something like that. They're the new iteration of the Spectre gunship. And we'd have that flying lazy circles at 8,000 or 10,000 feet above this, because it has the ability to just make anything in the area spontaneously combust. And we would block the roads, and then we would send Delta Force or the Navy SEALs or somebody into the palace to take out the president, who's not really the president. He's illegitimate at this point. And then we would pack up and we would fly away. We would leave. You see here, Caracas is not right on the coast, so we probably would not be landing Marines or anything unless it was like again, some kind of blocking force or a feint, trying to draw forces toward the beach so that we could hit Caracas. The big concern would be that Maduro would be able to escape, so jump on a private aircraft filled with all of his gold that he's stolen from the country and take off and fly to Russia or someplace, Cuba, something like that. So in addition to taking out that palace and the area around it, we would be very likely taking over any nearby airstrip to stop any aircraft from taking off. And again, that's another Ranger mission that we trained for constantly when I was in the Rangers. So all that to say, it's not completely undoable. We could do it. The Venezuelans have a robust military, but they're poorly armed or poorly trained. The equipment's old. These guys are poorly motivated, poorly led. So, you know, a bunch of, they do have some air defenses, like old S-300s. We have already figured out that S-300s are no match whatsoever for an F-35. So our aircraft would immediately, before anything happened, vaporize all of the anti-air defenses in the region. And we would go in and we would, you know, it'd be, look, a mission like that would be audacious, to say the least. And it would likely earn us condemnation from other countries around the globe, Russia, China, Iran, you know, whatever. We don't care. Belgium, France. France would like to see everybody just surrender. So the question is, should we care? What would happen if we did it? What would happen if the United States actually went into Caracas and took out Nicolas Maduro and installed the rightfully elected president in his place? Well, Venezuela would in very short order become a much nicer place to live. there might be some upheaval for sure. The thing is, the Venezuelan military does not really support Maduro all that much. Those guys do what they are forced to do. They live under the same threats of oppression and violence as every other person in Venezuela. But what I've seen in talking to members of the Venezuelan military who have defected is that morale is extremely low. And it's very likely that those guys would immediately give up. The bigger concern is not the military, in my opinion. The bigger concern in Venezuela is the colectivos. That's the criminal gangs and cartels who are used to being able to rob, rape, pillage, and destroy at will, collect vacunas, collect taxes from the people, and they just sort of live large by taking advantage of the Venezuelan people. Those guys would not go quietly, and there would likely be some real fights against those guys. But fortunately, if we were able to turn the Venezuelan military to our side, maybe take out the generals that are getting money from the drug trafficking trade, and then everybody else, we say, hey, we'll leave you in place, we'll promote you to replace these generals we just took out, and you fight on the side of the new Venezuela. I think they would probably do that. If they did, then they could go fight the colectivos. And I think in a year or two, you might see lots and lots of Venezuelans returning to their homes in Venezuela. Because when you talk to people who left Venezuela, many of them have gone to Colombia and they are still there. More than, I think, 2 million Venezuelans are living in Colombia right now. There are a bunch in Ecuador, Chile, Peru, Bolivia, I don't know, Brazil, places like that. And of course, a lot of them have come to the United States. But if of all the Venezuelans I know, they will tell you Venezuela used to be such a nice country to live in. It used to be so beautiful, so safe. It was so prosperous, lots of jobs, tons of money. And we would love to go back as soon as Maduro is no longer in power. So we would see a reverse migration as people move back to Venezuela. Of course, the Venezuelan oil and gas industry would boom because we would lift all the sanctions. That's one thing that really kind of bugs me right now, is that the Trump administration has given licenses to Chevron, among others, to go ahead and continue extracting oil from Venezuela. And so Venezuela last month just had its best month since, 2024 at least. And they were able to export almost 1 million barrels of oil to the United States. These guys, we're about to go to war with Venezuela and we're buying oil from them. Now, part of the reason we're doing that is because we kind of need the oil that they have to keep our refineries running in the United States because of the particular kind of oil that Venezuela has, and our refineries are made to process that thick, dirty kind of oil. And they don't run right if we put cleaner, lighter, sweeter crude into it. So we need some oil from Venezuela. But still, it just doesn't sit right with me that we're allowing Venezuela to profit when we literally are sanctioning them for everything else and, calling them an enemy. And they are our nearest enemy, other than Cuba, I would say. Or the Democrats in Congress. You could make a case with our bigger enemy. But so this is really upsetting to see. And there are rumors that Venezuela has been receiving, if not shipments of drones from Iran, at the very least, drone technology from Iran and Russia. We know that they've gotten some drones from Russia, like the Orlan 10, which is an observation drone. But there's been some rumors that Venezuela has been building or preparing to build the one-way suicide drones like the Shahed 136 drones that are being used in Ukraine and are being used against Iran. I'm sorry, against Israel. Some of those drones have enough range to make it to the United States if they were launched from Venezuela. Now, do I think that's likely? No, not likely at all. Very, very highly unlikely, because Venezuela might be, belligerent, might be aggressive, but they're not stupid. And if they bombed Miami with suicide drones, a whole lot of bad stuff would start happening inside Venezuela. We would send a whole lot more than 4,500 Marines if that was the case. So they know better. But if we somehow ended up in a declared war against Venezuela, or they declared war against us, it is possible they could shoot at some of our naval ships or something like that and put U.S. troops at risk. So what do you think? Do you think that the United States ought to go ahead and take that audacious step of sending in the special operations to take out Nicolas Maduro and try to kind of rid ourselves of the threat from Venezuela? The biggest threat from Venezuela is not military, it's asymmetric. The biggest threat from Venezuela is drugs and things like that are coming into the United States. And that's why the Trump administration is addressing that threat directly. But if you want to go to the source, you go right to Caracas and you take out Nicolas Maduro. So what do you think? Should we do it? Do you think it's worth doing? I'd be interested to know what you think. Now, there's also another threat that is in Venezuela, or that Venezuela poses, and that's not just to the United States, but there's another way that the U.S. could find ourselves in a conflict with Venezuela, and this is actually far more likely than Venezuela attacking the United States or the U.S. taking out Nicolas Maduro with a raid, like an Operation Just Cause type thing. And that would be this country over here, Guyana. You see this country next to Venezuela. Everything to the west of this line right here, all of this area, which represents about 2/3 of Guyana's territory, is called Essequibo. And Venezuela claims it as part of Venezuela. They did that last year or the year before. They said, yeah, that's ours. That land that is, the whole world believes is part of Guyana, that's actually part of Venezuela now. And all the oil that's found offshore right out here, which is substantial, like 13 billion barrels of oil, that all belongs to Venezuela. That's all ours now. And so Venezuela has been threatening to take over that part of Guyana for some time. There's a couple things that keep them from doing it. Number one is the jungle down here. This jungle is so thick that there's literally not one road between Venezuela and Guyana. Not one. This river here, called the Essequibo River, is, see if I can pull that up. Yeah, there we go. Maybe I can, no, maybe not. Anyway, yeah. This river, this river, the Essequibo River, is what Venezuela considers to be the border between Venezuela and what's left of Guyana over here. But actually, all of this belongs to Guyana. So again, with no roads, Venezuela doesn't have any easy way to invade it. The only way they could possibly do it would be by sea, and they don't really have the ships to move enough troops over there to actually take and hold this land. That's one thing keeping them from doing it. The other thing that's keeping them from doing it is the fact that the United States has said, if you even try, you're going to have to deal with the United States, where you're going to be going to war with us, that we will protect Guyana's territorial sovereignty, partially because the United States wants to buy that oil from Guyana, and we've already done so. Chevron and other oil companies have already paid Guyana for the extraction rights to take the oil out of this area, and now they're getting bills from Venezuela saying, you owe us money for taking that oil out. And the United States is like, yeah, no, not going to happen. Don't think so, right? So tomorrow I'm going to go to Venezuela. I'm sorry, not Venezuela. Tomorrow I'm going to go to Guyana, and I'm going to report on this topic in greater detail. So you'll be able to take a look at that. Whoops. Whoa, how did I just zoom way out? Three-dimensional. That's exciting. So we're going to learn a lot more about Guyana in the coming week. So stay tuned for that. And last but not least, I have this video of the United States military training with troops from Guyana. This is fast rope training. It's a U.S. Black Hawk helicopter there. Those guys in blue are Guyanese soldiers, I'm assuming. The guys in camouflage are U.S. troops. My son Mason was the crew chief on one of these Black Hawks, so that was the job he did. This big fat rope you see hanging down here, let me turn the audio down on that. The big fat rope you see hanging down is called a fast rope, not that one that they're connecting to the floor. That's just a sling rope. And you see what they'll do is they'll fly in, they'll hover over an area, and then they'll jump out and slide down the rope as if it's a big fireman's pole. So this guy's from St. Lucia. This was a joint operation between the United States and several other countries. One of them was Guyana. So you see that they're now at a hover. They're like, go, and the guy jumps out and he slides down. I've done this hundreds of times, and it's a lot of fun. Now, this is training, so they're doing this over a field. You might say, well, why doesn't the helicopter just land? Because obviously the helicopter could easily land right there in that big soccer field. Because this insertion method is designed to put guys on top of buildings or into areas where it would be difficult or dangerous for the helicopter to land. And they can, right now they're fast roping from about 30 feet, which is very low. You see there, very low, very slow. This is done in training. Normally you'd have like 2 or 3 guys on the rope at a time. Just going very fast down there. And it actually is a very quick way to get troops on the ground if you need to insert them quickly. You can go out both sides. You can empty that helicopter in a matter of seconds with guys that are well trained. These guys are not well trained, so they're going very slowly and carefully in an open field. But that is, just one of the ways that the United States is doing joint training with the guys from not just Guyana, but other countries in the region. And all of that is designed to show that we are friends with Guyana, so don't mess with Guyana, right? It's not that the Guyanese are needing to fast rope into anything very often, but we're just doing that as a show of force. So let's go over to our questions now and get that done, because I got to hurry up. Let's see if we've got any. I don't know if anybody was able to put questions up, because I don't have a lot of mods on today, so I may need to go through. Broski Bear says, what, if anything, do you think comes out of that Rubio meeting with the Mexican President Sheinbaum? Well, let's hope that he was able to pressure Sheinbaum to do more to stop the cartels. I think what Rubio probably said to Sheinbaum was, either you take care of the cartel problem or we will. Take your pick. Because I think it's, as I've said, it's likely that the United States military does engage in kinetic action against the cartels. Now, we just saw that happen in international waters off the coast of Venezuela. But it is likely that we will see continued kinetic action and it may actually happen on Mexican soil if the Mexican government doesn't take steps to make a difference. Somebody said, how many languages do you speak, read, understand? I speak Spanish and English a little bit, and I used to speak French fluently, but I wouldn't say I'm fluent now. I can understand French. I've been studying Russian for about 3 years, and I have a smattering of, I can understand Italian, Portuguese, because they're very close to Spanish and French. And I've gotten to the point where I can understand a few words in Arabic and in Armenian and Ukrainian and things like that, but mostly just those. Question, will removing Maduro, I missed a question here. Do you think that the National Guard could be for more than just local crime, possibly preparing for war with the cartels that have been integrated into every aspect of our society? No, I don't think so, because that would definitely cause legal problems with the Posse Comitatus Act and things like that. Question, will removing Maduro reduce drug trafficking when Mexico is still the main U.S. supplier? It absolutely would, because Mexico supplies fentanyl, meth, and marijuana mostly. The cocaine, by and large, comes from South America, Colombia, and Peru, and Venezuela. A lot of it that is made in Colombia and Peru and other places goes through Venezuela to get to the United States. So we would definitely make a dent in the drugs coming into the United States by taking out Maduro. No question. And won't he just be replaced? Well, if we take out Maduro, we would put the legally elected president of Venezuela into his place. Gustavo, what is his name? I just spaced on his name. And that guy is friendly to America. So it wouldn't be like in Iran, where if we took out the Ayatollah Khamenei, they'd replace him with somebody even more extreme. We'd put in somebody who's friendly to America, most likely. So question from Mama Rissa, even if we uproot Maduro, wouldn't another Maduro just fill its place? Okay, so I just answered that question. Hopkey says, where do you think Hezbollah will go if there's regime change in Venezuela? Let's hope they go, we could send them right to hell. That'd be good. They would not have as much leeway in Venezuela if we get rid of Maduro. And look, Venezuela is a very bad actor. There's no two ways about it. They don't just function as a transshipment point for drugs coming into the United States. They also function as a point for terrorists coming into the United States, because Iranians and Hezbollah operatives and Syrians and people like that can all come to Venezuela. They get sheep dipped and issued a Venezuelan passport as if they're Venezuelan citizens. And then they were, under the Biden administration, coming up through the Darien Gap into the United States illegally as, a part of that huge flood of people. So there's already a whole bunch of them in the United States. And they certainly could cause problems, bigger problems than we already have. Tizra Pinto says, could the Foro de Sao Paulo be considered a terrorist organization for enabling and enriching from drug cartels all over Latin America? Yes, they could. I can't read that. Chuck, in your professional opinion, what percentage would you give the USA going in and taking out the self-appointed president of Venezuela? I think right now it's probably 10% chance, maybe less. There is a chance that we do it, but it would be an audacious step without a doubt. And I don't know if there is the political will to go that far, but we'll see. Question, what is the worst country you've been to? Somalia or Detroit? Been the worst. Or maybe Portland. Portland, Oregon is pretty bad. Havana, what kind of intelligence can't tell if incoming planes towards your ships are enemy's fighter jets or commercial aircraft? Well, a lot of that, in my understanding, I'm not a pilot, my son is, but my understanding from when I was a pilot a long time ago is that there's a box on the plane that squawks, information, puts out data about that flight. And that can be spoofed, it can be turned on, it can be turned off. There are ways to try to confuse. Now, I think U.S. naval ships probably have sufficiently advanced radar that we could certainly tell the difference between a commercial airliner and a fighter jet, sure. But what about the difference between a military cargo plane and a civilian airliner, or a civilian airliner that's being used for military purposes? Or, I mean, there's all sorts of ways that are something that's squawking the wrong frequency. There's all sorts of things that could happen, and we know they could happen because they have happened in the past. So there is there's a non-zero chance of that happening. Stealth drone tech question: Is it possible or any reason to visit the French section of Guyana, French Guyana? I would like to go over there to go to Devil's Island, but that's on the other side of Suriname, and I don't think I have time to go to Suriname on this trip. So I'm only going to be there a couple days. Okay, Ray says, is Hezbollah still in the area of Venezuela? Yes, absolutely they are. Hezbollah has a significant presence in Venezuela, and that's another reason for the United States to put serious pressure, at the very least, on Venezuela. Okay, folks, thank you very much for watching. We got almost 1,700 people online. Do me a favor and go hit the like button and share this podcast. Let people know that we're here. That helps grow the channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. We won't spam you, but make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. And don't forget to go over to chuckholton.com. A lot of extra stuff going up there that you're going to like. In the description of today's video, you will see a link to our trip upcoming next June to Armenia. If you haven't been to Armenia, you are missing out. Armenia is one of the best. I just counted on that map yesterday because I hadn't updated that map in a while, and I figured out that I've been to 108 countries. Of all 108 countries, Armenia is the best place I would recommend to go. If you said I can only go to one country and to visit on vacation, once in a lifetime trip, I would say choose Armenia. For the history, the culture, the food, the people, the prices, the beauty, it is definitely worth going. And that's why we run trips over there. So if you want to travel with my wife and I to Armenia next June, get signed up on our trip. We got a few spots left, and you can find the link in the description of today's video. So again, please hit the like button. Thank you very much. God bless you. And tomorrow I may not be able to do a live because I'll be traveling, but if I do, it will be once I get to Guyana. So stay tuned. We'll see you.